We preview the Ravens Week 17 matchup with the Los Angeles Rams with a very special guest next here on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
As we return here with another episode of Locked On Ravens, I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, and we return. It is Purple Friday once again, and that means back with us here today to recap the Ravens' Week 16 loss to the Bengals and also preview their Week 17 matchup with the Rams. Former Baltimore Ravens wide receiver, Super Bowl champion, Qadry Ismail, and Q, the Ravens, 4 straight losses now. They have some must-win games coming up. How you doing today?
Woo! I'm doing great. The holidays were good. I've eaten to my heart's content. But every time I sit back and we sit here and talk about the Ravens, it seems like there's always something. And going from 8-3 now to, dare I say, 4 straight losses, which is unheard of in a John Harbaugh-led football team, I'm good. But let's see what Sunday brings.
Yeah, big Week 17 matchup with the Rams. And, it's a game that I know, Q, we were talking a couple weeks ago about, this is not a must-win game for them if they can take care of their AFC business, their AFC North business, and whether, injuries, 2-point conversions, whatever you want to chalk it up to, they just haven't gotten the job done yet. And unfortunately, that was the case in Week 16 against Cincinnati, Baltimore losing 41-21, dropped them to 8-7. The Bengals now have that tiebreaker over them that we talked about. It was so important for the Ravens to win that game. Now, their season isn't over. I think 10-7 still is enough. But Q, in this Cincinnati game, it was not Lamar Jackson at the helm. It was not Tyler Huntley at the helm. It was Josh Johnson, the well-traveled veteran, because, Jackson out with the ankle. Tyler Huntley got placed on the COVID list literally about 24 hours before the game started. So Johnson comes in and I thought played relatively well, all things considered. 28-40, 304 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Didn't really make an impact on the ground, just 5 carries for 10 yards, but I just don't think that's his game right now. He doesn't have that Lamar Jackson, Tyler Huntley mobility, and we saw it on a couple of those plays that were design runs to him pretty early and often, and I'm glad they kind of moved away from it as the game went on. But Q, what do you think of Josh Johnson and his performances? He led this offense for the entirety of the game.
He did. I thought, right from the beginning when he was announced as the guy that they're going to go with, it was going to be an uphill climb for him. But we saw his veteran experience. If you look at his resume, the places that he's played, it's quite extensive, and he's played in the league. He's played in the American Football League. He's played in the different upstart leagues that kind of folded in the spring. The experiences that he had, I thought, really, came out and showed him, and it also helped that he knew and was familiar with what went on with Greg Roman as far as the nomenclature. I'm a big believer that, NFL, if you went into an NFL locker room and sat there in a meeting, it is literally speaking another language. And so from speaking another language, you go to all these different teams. He was with the Jets. They have a whole different system, and you got to relearn and re-educate yourself on this system and try to piece things together. That's a challenge, and I thought he handled the challenge extremely well. He had over 300 yards passing. We know that he's not Lamar Jackson when it comes to running the ball, but again, I use the word that I use with Tyler Huntley. He was decisive where he wanted to go with the ball. Clearly, the chemistry wasn't A+, but you throw him 300 yards, you're getting it out to a wide variety of guys, and he did that. So they came up short. Defense, what was it, first 7 drives or something crazy like that were scores. That's sad. And unfortunately, they couldn't get any stops, because if they did, I think Josh and company would have had a competitive enough game and made it interesting.
Yeah, you read my mind there, Q, because with the way that the defense was playing and the way that the Ravens offense does have their injuries, the Ravens offense never had a shot in this one because these aren't the 2019 Ravens, unfortunately, where they're putting up 30, 40 points consistently. They just don't have that firepower. We've talked about the run game where they don't have Dobbins and that explosive ability, no Edwards and that explosive ability, some injuries there. So I thought that, if the defense had played a bit better, Josh Johnson and company would have had a much better shot. But as soon as the Bengals started putting up points on possession after possession after possession, and it wasn't stopping, at that point, you have to say, well, just how many times can Josh Johnson lead this offense down the field? It might not be as many times as Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and all those guys. So I give credit to Johnson and what he was able to do for sure, especially on a short week and short notice for him. But some of the players he was throwing to stepped up in a big way. Now, Mark Andrews obviously has been a star, but I do want to focus in on a couple of other guys who are kind of down on the wide receiver depth chart who stepped up in James Prochet and Tylan Wallace. Prochet, 7 catches, 76 yards and they weren't just easy catches either. He was surrounded by like 4 Bengals and plucking the ball out of the air, and he was insane. And then Tylan Wallace with a really nice effort on a 3rd down where he bounced off of 2 guys. And it's those types of plays that make you really excited about what the Ravens have in this wide receiver room, because we know what Marquise Brown can do. We've seen the flashes from Rashad Bateman, but now factoring in guys like James Prochet and Wallace and even Devin Duvernay, who didn't play in this game, how excited are you for the future of this Ravens wide receiver room? And who do you think should be getting some more snaps here moving forward?
Arguably, this room is as complete a room as we've seen in the National Football League. I think it's just whether or not they get an opportunity. Clearly Josh was like, look, I'm coming in here. I don't have any favorites. I know there's a guy that wears jersey number 89. We'll design some plays to go to him. But otherwise, if you open, you getting the ball. And he did what he needed to do. I was thoroughly impressed with his ability. I think at the same time, when you look at the bigger picture of it all, you touched upon it. What does this look like as far as the future is concerned? And I think from, the depth, the way in which the guys didn't flinch, it speaks to. So it's interesting because you get a lot of criticism about Greg Roman and the passing attack and all that, but you see these receivers and they're running crisp routes and they're putting themselves in position. And I know Keith Williams and T. Martin both were brought in to upgrade the position. And I think they, if there was ever a time to show it, it's what we saw against Cincinnati, what we saw against Green Bay. What we're seeing are guys running plays and running routes and being in where they need to be in to make plays and be available for the quarterback. So, there are going to be some decisions that are going to be made. Whether or not, if you play well, you're a young guy, then a guy like a Sammy Watkins is like, hey, we love you, got to go. There decisions that are going to be made. What's my guy? Why am I blanking on him? Notre Dame receiver. He's been kind of off and on this year. Boykin.
Miles Boykin.
He had a target, and you could see it's like, oh, man, I was hoping that, he had an opportunity to take advantage of that target. He didn't. It was incomplete. But you could see him going over to the sideline, and John Harbaugh was like, all right, I want to talk to you. And that encouragement for him, I was like, that's saying something. That's like, I know you coach guys up and all that, but, there's something there to not just dismiss a player, and for him not to be dismissed, I think that says a lot. So overall, very impressed with the receiving core.
Yeah, and I think that what you were talking about there with Boykin and Harbaugh, Q, is just the type of coach that John Harbaugh has turned into. The players coach, is definitely still kind of a strict guy, it feels like, but it's in a different way now. I think, he's kind of shifted his mentality, and I think, these players will go to war for him. He will go to war for his players. It's that type of relationship, which I think is one of the many reasons why this team is successful, both on and off the field. It's not just an on-field thing. But Q, switching to defense in this Cincinnati game, look, the secondary was not good. They gave up a franchise record 525 yards to Joe Burrow, 4 touchdowns. T. Higgins went for almost 200 on them. But there was a bright spot, I would say, and that is the play of Tony Jefferson. Now, Jefferson signed with this team a couple weeks ago. It's on the practice squad. And he was flying around out there. he ended up, and this is crazy to me, because, for a guy who came in a couple weeks ago, led this team in tackles with 10. And it wasn't because he was getting cooked on every single play, which, you look to a guy like Kevon Seymour or Darryl Worley. The reason they were kind of high up in the tackle ranks there were because they were tackling the guys who were burning them, which is unfortunate. Right. But Jefferson was coming up, making tackles, strong in the run game, coming up and forcing guys to the ground. How impressed are you with Tony Jefferson? Because for a player who is coming back from that injury a couple seasons ago when he was still playing in Baltimore, seemed like some teams had lost some confidence in him. I thought he showed a really good stretch of things in that game against Cincinnati.
Yeah, he did. I thought for what he knew of Wink Martindale's defense and some of the play calls, we talked about it with Josh as far as it's a whole new language. It's a different language times 10 when it comes to the defensive calls, and there are nuances there. The Eric Weddle, Jim Leonard, and Ed Reeds of the world, they march to the beat of their own drum because they know the defense so incredibly well. And they get a chance to freelance somewhat. Well, for one moment in time, it looked like Tony Jefferson was being able to put into that company of safeties for the Ravens because everybody else was so like, what's the call? What do we do? And I think, him knowing what to do gave him the freedom to play with that reckless abandon. So I don't think it was an accident that he played so well. I think he knew what he was doing, and I think he knew his assignment, and he was like, hey, I'm going to go out here and I'm going to do my best. And, I think he is one of those guys that is a pro's pro. You're coming in, your assignment. Are you going to be capable of executing your assignment? And clearly he was.
Yeah, he's a guy who's loved in that locker room. John Harbaugh, Don Martindale talk very highly of him. Call him their workout guy. He gets in there early in the morning. Yeah. So he's a player who knows what he wants, and that's to be great. And to do that, he works very hard to do that. And for me, I think what he showed on Sunday in Week 16 was just, some of that swagger, some of those hard-hitting hits that, when the Ravens signed him the first time, I know it didn't work out for a couple reasons. Unfortunately, with the deal that he signed, it was a big money contract. But I think that overall, he's a player that can really make a big impact over these final 2 weeks here, especially in a secondary unit that's just so depleted and just needs healthy bodies overall. But we'll head into our first break here. When we get back, we'll be flipping and talking about the Ravens Week 17 match with the Rams and previewing it. So stay tuned for that, and we'll be right back. It's the new year, so that means New Year's resolutions. If you're about getting fitter, eating healthier, make sure you include Built Bar in your plan. Built Bar is the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, maybe even better than a candy bar. Built Bar makes it easier to stick to your resolution because it tastes so good, you'll want to eat it. You'll want to eat healthy, but it just gets boring. But Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate, and most of them contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. So even if you're not a huge fan of working out, you can at least eat something that tastes good and is good for you. That way, when you enjoy a delicious Built Bar, you can almost count it as a workout. And there are so many flavors to choose from. So go to Built.com and use promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off of your order. Use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. We returned here. It's our second segment of this Purple Friday edition of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher, your host, still here with Qadry Ismail. And Q, the Ravens this week 17 matchup against a very, very talented Los Angeles Rams team is a big one. And it seems like we've said that every single week because the Ravens have not been able to pick up a win in about a month here. So they need to pick them up now because, again, I think 10-7 is enough to make the playoffs. They would need a little bit of help elsewhere. But at the same time, 9-8 with the way the AFC is this season would give them just under, like a 5% chance for pretty much a non-existent chance to make the playoffs. So starting on the offensive side of the ball here, Q, obviously one of the bigger storylines is the quarterback situation as it has been over the past couple of weeks. And there was a video put out by, I believe it was Jameson Hensley of ESPN of Lamar Jackson throwing the football and kind of jogging down the field. An obvious limp was there. And the Ravens did get Tyler Huntley back from the COVID list, and they have Johnson, Chris Streveler back, the practice squad quarterback as well. With the stuff that you have heard and seen, Q, from Lamar Jackson and just the way that bone bruises are, they can be a little bit tricky. If Lamar Jackson is at 80, 85%, we don't know the exact number, obviously, would you feel comfortable putting him out there, or would you rather go with Tyler Huntley, who has shown that he can lead this team and keep this team in games in the past?
I would rather go with Tyler Huntley. If he's limping and he's not at full strength, Lamar's game is. We saw a little bit with Josh when Greg Roman dialed up a couple of quarterback design runs. There are guys that can get into from third to fourth gear, and they can go maybe 15 yards if they're fortunate. But when it comes down to it, Lamar Jackson, what makes him so special is that he can go into fifth gear, and he has that fifth gear, and you're just not stopping him. You're hoping and praying that he does one juke too many. But if you reference even back to the game against the Titans, and it's in the playoffs, and he's just like making guys miss, and he's jetting down the field. You hear Mike Vrabel talk about, man, that Lamar Jackson, he is fast. That to me is a guy who's healthy and able to endure. If that game is unavailable, if his rushing and moving and being elusive is not available, I just don't think it is wise, especially if you're labeling him as your franchise guy. I just don't think it's wise to go and put him in harm's way and limit some of his capability, especially that he missed so much time. If he got hurt and he's been dealing with it for a while, he's kind of adjusted, offense is adjusted, he's felt and moved comfortably, that's one thing. But when you're talking about missing significant practice time, I'd rather err on the side of caution and go with a guy who would be more than likely going to help us get to a victory because of his health, not worry and hope that he doesn't make a mistake or something because of his health.
Right. And, there is no question that, look, if Lamar Jackson is healthy, he is this team's star. He is this team's franchise quarterback. And because of that, because of how good he is and because of what he brings to the table, I would not want to put him out there if there's a chance for injury, especially for an injury where you're right, Q. He hasn't been practicing. He hasn't been kind of testing on it. That video was probably some of the first, pure, all right, practice action that we've seen out of him on the actual injured ankle. And if he has to be out there against this Rams defense that has Aaron Donald and has Von Miller, and the offensive line is dealing with their injuries, and Jackson's forced to escape and be out of the pocket, and he just can't do it. This isn't me saying, Jackson, it's because of his running ability because he can't throw. No, we're not talking about that. I know people will connect the dots, and I'm going to say, stop it. But, at the end of the day,
now.
the Ravens, and what makes Lamar Jackson so good is the fact that he has that extra element to his game. And if he isn't able to put that on full display, it hinders the product on the field already. And it's not fair to Jackson, I don't think, either, because out there on the field, he knows what he's capable of, and if he's not able to do it, I'm sure it's frustrating. So to have a player like Huntley, who has shown the ability to lead this team down the field, shown the ability to keep the Ravens close and even go out there and win some games for him, I think that if Jackson is not 100% healthy, that is probably the best bet for them at this point. But Q, talking about that Rams defense, Aaron Donald is there. And Aaron Donald remembers 2019. He said in a press conference this week, he has it in the back of his mind where he remembers he got held to just one total tackle in 2019 against this Ravens offensive line. Now, a little different. Marshall Yanda was on that line, and how nice Marshall Yanda would be to have at this point if on the Ravens. Although at this point he could maybe line up a wide receiver. He's slimmed down.
I'm about to say
he could be the slot. A big slot for him he could be, but without Marshall Yanda there, Ronnie Stanley injured, the Ravens are gonna have to devote a ton of resources to Donald. He is one of the best defenders in all of the NFL. But as I mentioned, the Rams defense, a ton of talent across that front seven, and of course in their secondary. Hugh, are you just saying we're going to triple team Aaron Donald here and make someone else beat us like a Von Miller, or are you still spreading those resources out, maybe double teaming Aaron Donald, letting him go one-on-one, and putting the rest of the resources out there to block so that maybe Tyler Huntley has more time in that pocket? What are you doing here to stop Aaron Donald?
Oh my gosh, we could be here all night because there's so many ways that you're trying to I'm glad I'm not Wink Martindale and trying to scheme to get for the Rams. And I'm glad I'm not Greg Roman to scheme and how I'm going to protect against the Rams. The names on the back of the jersey, as far as Vaughn is concerned, he's doing good. He's not doing the Von Miller that we have been accustomed to, so that's one thing. But Aaron Donald, and he's talking about I remember it, and his memory from 2019 is sharp. That concerns you because this team, like you said, with Marcion not being there, it's a different ball club. This is a team where, Kevin, I just think the offensive line has really been up and down. Again, when you look at it, you can triple team him, but that's going to free another guy up one-on-one. I don't know if it's triple team so much as, when I say triple team, I'm saying if he lines up in the interior, you're going to have, maybe the center block his way, and then the guard is going to be with him at all times. Or you're going to, if he so desires to be on the outside and try to, do his rush from the outside, I think the one thing that we could see from that would be, having a tight end and chipping him. I don't know if we know the status of Patrick Ricard or not, if he's going to be active, but I know this, it'd be great to have them what we call wham blocks where, you kind of go in motion and then all of a sudden, boom, you're just, hitting once the ball is snapped, you're hitting that gap between the guard and the center real hard, and whoever's there, Aaron Donald, you're going to get it. And they did a lot of those little things like that versus Aaron Donald in 2019. So there's a lot of scheming that can be done. However, this is a different talented animal when it comes to what the personnel has going up against Aaron Donald this time around in 2021. Well, I guess it'd be 2022.
Yep, exactly. 2022, the start of the new year. So hopefully the Ravens offensive line can get off to a good start in the new year. I think priority number one for this entire Ravens offense has to be, where is 99 on the field? Let us do as much as we can to neutralize him. I think that's where the Ravens have to be for sure. But Q, this Ravens offense, it feels like they have to get a bit creative over the last final weeks here because of the injuries and of everything they've gone through. And we talked about, and Greg Roman also talked about, opening the vault, letting us see those trick plays, see those things we haven't seen, because you don't want to open up your entire playbook in the first 4 weeks. It's all on film there. But as we head into the final couple of weeks here, we haven't seen too much of a vault opening. So do you think that, and Roman hasn't really been over the course of his Ravens tenure a huge trick play guy, like flea flickers and reverses and crazy stuff like that. But would you maybe like to see a little bit more of those over the final 2 weeks as the Ravens offense looks for ways to move the football?
You could, but why? In other words, will the defense be gullible? So when you do a misdirection play, it's because of what we call the flow. The flow of the defense is so tremendous that to break that up, you will have a trick play. That's what I believe it was. Maybe it was 2014 or 13, where the Patriots did that to the Ravens in the playoffs. Why? Because it was such a good, disciplined team that, that guard is going to pull, or that tight end is split out wide, or here's a scenario that we're presented with. We're going to go out there and we're going to shut it down because we know it's coming. Well, great. You, Josh McDaniels, now have this way about showing the same look. You anticipate that look. And what happens? It's a double play. Amendola throwing it down the football field, the whole 9 yards, and off you go. Is that the case with Greg Roman and this offense? I think what they do is from a running aspect of things. But what we've been talking about since we joined on here, there is no J.K. Dobbins. There is no Gus Edwards. You don't have the full complement of healthy bodies, offensive line-wise. Orlando Brown's not coming through that door. So with that said, we know that, the vault for Greg Roman, as opposed to busting out the stacks of gold, we might be looking at a little bit of fool's gold when it comes down to opening up, just because you don't have the personnel to be able to execute it.
Right. And the way that injuries have impacted this team, literally, before the year, I said, look, injuries are going to be a key storyline. It's either they were able to overcome them or they weren't. It's as simple as that. And people say, oh, why are you using the injury excuse? And at this point, it's not an excuse, it's a reality because of how many guys they have out. Every team goes through it. I understand it's not just the Ravens, but for a team that could have done so much on the offensive side of the ball this year with Dobbins and with Edwards, seeing the misdirection, seeing all that, we just with the players they have right now with Latavius Murray and Devonta Freeman, they just aren't the same players. They're a little older, have a little bit less of the skill set the Ravens need at this point. So, you can do a flea flicker here and there, but it's also game flow. It's, does this make sense in the flow of the game? You talked about the flow of the defense as well. There are a bunch of things that can happen, and I think for a Ravens team that just is down so many guys, it can be a little bit complicated. So, yes, the vault, I think, open it all the way that you have it. But if there's fool's gold in there, as you talked about, Q, if there's regular gold, we'll find out in a couple of weeks. But we'll head into our final break. When we get back, we'll talk about this Ravens defensive unit as they look to stop Matthew Stafford and company. So stay tuned for that, and we'll be right back. BetOnline is who covered this holiday season with more props, odds, and last never before as football continues to march through the college bowl season and the pro football playoffs. BetOnline remains your number one spot for all the sports action this season. That's the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo code LOCKEDON to receive your bonus. From basketball, football, NHL, basket, and UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. So take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. So don't wait to take advantage of all the new amazing offers available. BetOnline, where the game starts. We return here. It's our final segment of this Locked On Ravens Friday edition. Kevin Oestreicher is still here with Qadry Ismail. And Q, the Ravens defense is going to have their hands full this week against this Los Angeles Rams offense. The Rams go out, get Matthew Stafford in the offseason, trade away Jared Goff with some picks to get him. And he is over 30 touchdowns this season, has had 13 interceptions, so there have been a couple turnover issues for him. But the Rams, they have Cooper Kupp, who has been, I think, the best wide receiver in football this season. And there are a lot of guys who could have that title, but Kupp is just a couple hundred yards away from breaking Calvin Johnson's single season record, which is very, very impressive. You have Odell Beckham Jr. on that offense, who they brought in midseason, and a bunch of talented pass catching weapons going up against the Ravens secondary that just does not have a ton of bodies right now. So Q, let's start with Matthew Stafford in general, because I think one of the ways that the Ravens can make him a bit uncomfortable and force him into bad decisions is by pressuring him and getting pressure on him and forcing just him, maybe making a bad throw here or there, making a mistake, not going through his reads fully. How would you stop Matthew Stafford if you're this Ravens defense? You bringing the heat on him, or are you kind of dropping as many guys as you can back to help a depleted secondary?
Fortunate for them, they have a little bit of tape of them playing against Matthew Stafford when he was having Calvin Johnson on his team, when he was with the Lions. And, of course, that was a game that was awesome game to call because, one, Justin Tucker kicked a 61-yarder, which the record of 61 yards indoors was just tremendous. Now, obviously, 66 yards. Regardless of in or outdoors, it's a record, period, NFL record. So, I just think that the video recalling back that game, it was about trying to rattle a guy who is a tough quarterback, hard-nosed guy. He's going to play to the bitter end type of a quarterback and just has an immense amount of talent. Cannon for an arm. So disrupting his rhythm is going to be priority number one. You're not going to be able to disrupt his rhythm with a bunch of no-name guys in the secondary that are going to be struggling to cover his receivers. That's for sure. So you're going to need your defensive front. And I've been saying this every week, but I don't care. We need to say it again. You need to have your defensive front, like big-time setup. Big time be the pressure guys that get after Matthew Stafford. That's the only way it's going to really happen. That's the only way when you look at the whole flow of win this game and continue to be in the conversation of the playoffs. That's the only way. You got to get to Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford will make an errant throw, and you got to be the guy that picks it off. You can't have it bounce off your chest and say, oh, I should have, would have, could have. Got to be able to make that happen. Otherwise, it's going to be a long day yet again because Matthew Stafford has 2 game films that he's going to be looking at. He's going to be drooling. That was one with Aaron Rodgers, and the other one was with Joe Burrow.
Yeah, and the Ravens defense has been such a low turnover defense this season. There haven't been the Marlon Humphrey fruit punches, and now, there aren't anymore because he's not in there. But the interceptions have been low. You're talking about, interceptions have been bouncing off hands, bouncing off the chest the entire season. So to be able to get a couple of interceptions against Matthew Stafford or force a few fumbles against receivers or running backs, I think that's where you get the momentum. And if you have the momentum, you keep it and make it even stronger at that point. But Q, one of those receivers in Cooper Kupp, the Ravens are going to have to put a lot of attention on him because they just don't have the bodies in the secondary anymore to match up one-on-one with him. You at least have to bring safety up over the top to just limit what he can do, but he's a technician as a route runner, can beat you in so many different ways. Are you giving Cooper Kupp the Devontae Adams treatment where you're lining up 2 guys on him and bracket coverage and all that? Or are you maybe trusting with just safety help because there is Odell Beckham and there are a couple of other guys, but obviously Kupp is the big fish you want to fry here?
You do. I'm nervous, or I shouldn't say nervous, but concerned as far as the Odell thing because he played in this division before. He's had, when he was with the Giants, going back quite a few years, go to MetLife, and he had a very strong game late in the second half against the Ravens and single-handedly beat the Ravens. Obviously, with Marlon Humphrey covering him last year, he wasn't quite the guy as far as what we saw at the Browns. So I think in his mind, like Aaron Donald, I think I need to redeem myself. And so that's the struggle that you're going to be faced with. Guys like Cooper Kupp, you don't stop them. You just hope to contain them, and they get yards, but they don't get scores. I think that's the big thing when you look at this secondary.
Yeah, and just being able to at least neutralize Kupp as best they can is huge, but you also have to realize that, yes, Odell Beckham is still a very talented wide receiver. He's done good things in a Rams uniform, and I think for that reason, the Packers had big games when the Ravens covered Devontae Adams the way that they did. They got games from Marquez Valdes-Scantling. They got some plays from Allen Lazard. So there will be other players to beat you. But look, if you know Devontae Adams is out there, you know that he can beat your secondary. You have to at least try to neutralize that threat and then say, all right, you know what? If other guys beat us, and that's what it is. So I see them maybe, yes, using some of that Devontae Adams coverage because they just literally might need to, but at the same time, they also have to worry about Odell Beckham and Stafford and a couple of other those weapons on the offensive side of the ball. But Q, it's final score prediction time, and it's a big one this week because if the Ravens lose this game, it seems like their playoff hopes are all but done. Do you see Baltimore rallying together, picking up a win here, and moving to 9-7, or is this a game where they fall to 8-8, their 5th straight loss, and effectively almost end their playoff chances?
Yeah, you said it right there. 5th straight. I don't know. I don't see John Harbaugh losing 5 straight games. This team isn't the 2015 team. I think they're better. I think they find a way to get it done. I think Dafe Owe and I think Chris Bowser is in a position where he should be, with the new rules, off the COVID list and be fine. I think, Justin Houston and the rest of the boys, up front, get after it. I think that they make some game-changing plays. I think at the same time, offensively, if Lamar can go. If he can't, then in Huntley we trust. Let's hunt. Let's eat. Come on, let's do it. And I think there's enough guys that have talent. Obviously, 15 yards away is Mark Andrews from breaking the franchise all-time receiving mark, which is incredibly impressive. All eyes going to be on him like there are on Cooper Kupp. So in my mind, why don't you go all out and not hold back and, open up that vault and let's get it out to some of the other playmakers because they've made plays and push yourself in a position where you're still relevant, at least for another week, getting that 9th win. I'm going, the Ravens. Last time I went all conservative, I'm going to say the Ravens bust this thing out. It's going to be 42-13. 35.
Oh, high scoring. I like that. High scoring offense. And look, for me, the talent that the Ravens got back from the COVID list and even a couple guys, some injuries, it seems like they might be getting one or two completely back, which would be great. Earlier in the week, I had this Ravens team losing by like 9 or 8, but I can definitely see scenarios where they win. Now, Tyler Huntley being back is huge for this offense because whether it is, whatever is the percentage of health of Jackson out there or Huntley, you have a chance because you've seen what Huntley can do in this offense. And so at the very, least, if the Ravens lose it, I see them losing by 2 or 3. I see this being a close game because, look, this is their season. I think they understand that, where last week it was, yeah, look, this is big for the division and it's big for a couple other things. But if we lose it, if the Ravens lose it, at least they knew that, all right, we have a couple weeks to get right. And now they are there. They now need to get right. So this game is so close to me. I'm going to say they lose by 1. I want you to be right. I want myself to be wrong.
Sure.
But to me, I think that just with the way Kupp is playing, with the secondary, if the Ravens defense cannot stop the Rams offense early, that's a problem. Because I think I agree with you, and what we talked about earlier in the show, Q, is that we saw Josh Johnson in that offense flash, go down the field, score. But can they do it enough? And with Huntley at the helm against the Packers, put up more than 30, drove the offense down the field and came back. So for me, I'm going to say Rams 35, Ravens 34, but I like your prediction better. And I want you to be the one that takes home the prediction crown here because, if the Ravens lose this game, I don't know how likely their playoff chances are, but Q, that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for joining me here on the show. And hopefully next week we'll be talking about your prediction and how you were right instead of me saying the Ravens have lost 5 straight.
Appreciate you, Kevin. Thanks you.
Thanks so much, Q. That's all we have today on Locked On Ravens. We'll take a 2-day break, and when we get back here on Monday, we'll dive into everything relating to the Ravens Week 17 game against the Rams. So stay tuned for that, and I will see you on Monday.